Welcome everybody to the May edition of the Carrier's Edge webinar, Inside Workplace Culture and Fleet Safety. My name is Mark Morrell. I am the president of Carrier's Edge, and I am joined today by two most excellent speakers. I am joined by Rick Schmidt from Nussbaum Transportation and Michael Frolick from TransPro. Both interesting because they are both Hall of Fame fleets in the best fleets to drive for. So these companies have been on the best fleets to drive for list for 10 years consecutively. And that is a very, very difficult thing to do. As many fleets will tell you, it is hard to get on that list one time, and staying on it is even more difficult. So these guys have been on the list for a decade or more, and they obviously have some things figured out. So we are going to get them to share with us all of those things that they have figured out. So welcome, Rick, and welcome, Mike.
Yeah, thanks for letting us join. I
Yeah.
don't know that we have all things figured out, but we got a few things and we're trying to continuously learn, right?
Yes, well, not to put pressure on you, but now you have to explain to everybody how all of this works.
Right.
Okay, so what we're going to do today is talk about how workplace culture and fleet safety overlap. And I started this idea because it has hit me, and it's something that we've known for a long time through the Best Fleets to Drive For program, that it is possible to have a really good safety performance and not worry about culture if you don't care about driver turnover. If you want to make life miserable for your drivers, you can have pretty solid safety performance. You're going to have brutal turnover and miserable workers, but you can have decent safety performance. However, if you want to have good safety performance and good turnover, you really need to focus on workplace culture. And these two fleets have figured out a way to do that in a very nice way, and they do it very successfully. And it is a mindset change, and there is a real benefit to doing it. Obviously, with strong safety and strong retention, your business is much more stable and you're better positioned for the long term. So, this is a session that we did at the Best Fleets to Drive For conference back in March. We had an excellent session, and these guys have got a lot of great information. So, we're kind of revisiting that, but we're going to drill down a little bit more specifically into the training side of things because this is a safety and training audience. We're going to get into some specifics of that, and that gives us an opportunity to cover some things that we didn't really have a chance to do when we were in front of the larger group. So, to begin with, I want to start with kind of a broader discussion about where safety fits into the organization. And as many people here know, safety, they're often seen as kind of the sheriffs or the disciplinarians, the people that the drivers don't want to talk to, the spank people for every wrong move and that sort of approach. But it's not a very effective approach long term. You're not going to build good relationships and build culture and be able to work collaboratively to build a good safety program if that's the attitude. So let's start with how both of you position safety within the company. And I want to start with Rick because you have a really interesting approach on the orientation side. So let's talk about how you see safety working to be part of the workplace culture and how you get that message out to the drivers.
Yeah, so with specifically just with orientation, just overall safety, it's constant communication and relationship building and working with others in other departments. But specifically with orientation into drivers, one of our key roles is our safety team. They're going to be introduced to most every safety individual during orientation. We have orientation all at one site, and majority of our safety individuals work there. So they're going to see us all. They're going to get to interact with us. And that is specific to me. So I go into every orientation. And one thing that I talk about, a little bit of a joke, I tell them I think I'm everyone's favorite. and then you tell them what you do, and automatically you're at the bottom of the shoe. Um, but the conversation I have with them is I I I straight up tell them like you're never gonna hear me cuss, yell, scream, or manipulate, and that means I don't want it in return. Um, this job is hard, your job is hard, my job is hard, and we're here to work together. Like if we as a company, if as Newspawn, we have driver versus safety versus operations, things aren't going to go well. We all need each other. So why are we fighting each other? That doesn't mean we're going to agree on everything, but we're going to talk things through. We're going to talk things through professionally, and yeah, we're not going to cuss, yell, scream at each other. It doesn't go anywhere. So I mean, that's the small snippet. I mean, the conversation is about 40 minutes, and it starts off a good conversation, right? They start asking questions, and you get to be face to face with the drivers that you're potentially going to interact with down the road. And some of the drivers, because of the comment I make, they'll walk by my office and they'll say, "Hey, how's my favorite safety guy?" Okay, great. They might be a little sarcastic, but like they're building that relationship and that rapport so that then we become a place that we can be a resource and not a disciplinary.
So it's not uncommon for drivers to hear a set of messages when they start at a new company, and they tend
Hmm.
to be very cynical and they sort of have a bit of a standoffish approach, like, yeah, right, sure, everybody says that. So
Yeah.
how do you position that message so that it actually gets through to them? I think part of that is
Yeah.
when you deliver it, right?
Yeah, so we have a 3 day orientation, and I go in on day three. I don't go in on day one because if I say that on day one, they'll be like, ah, okay, who's this guy? Um, if I go in on day three, then by day three, they've met our CEO. Most of the time, he tries to pop in. They met our CFO. They've met our COO, and they've gotten to experience Newspawn as a whole, the company, the culture. And so when I go in there and I say that, it's like, okay, yeah, I have a little bit more trust that things are a little bit different here.
Mm. So
Now,
that's a
I
big
still
part
have
of
to
it,
prove it. I
right?
still have to prove it, but
Okay. Um, Now that's an interesting angle. So because what you're also sort of saying without really saying it is that this needs to be an organization-wide approach. You know,
oh
if
yeah,
safety says, yeah, we're important and we want to help you, but then operations is doing something different, that's not going to work, right? So you can do that on day three because the other parts of the organization are supporting it.
it's it's gonna align together because at that point, you know, they would have gone. We like them to sit with their driver manager face to face,
Hmm.
and think of all the questions that come up, like how well are you gonna run? How hard are you gonna run me? Are you
Hmm.
gonna, you know, get me home? All those questions that come up. So then they're going to be able to compare, like, what did my driver manager say? And now what is safety going to say? And now what is our CEO going to say? And what
Hmm.
does the shop say when, you know, we do truck orientation with them?
Right.
They're experiencing, like, without it all being safety related, like, they can see the safety culture when they go through an hour and a half truck orientation to go through the bells and whistles to make sure they understand how our equipment is set up.
Hmm. Hmm.
Every truck's a little
Okay.
bit different. So they get to experience that safety culture all the way up, and then Monday or Wednesday, they see me. So,
Ah, okay. And I realize one of the things that I should have done at the beginning and totally forgot because I'm so used to talking to you guys, that I should have shared with everybody a little bit about these fleets. Apologies,
mhm.
audience. This is normally like step one of doing a webinar. So I will now go back and to give you a little bit of a context around this. Now, Newsbound Transportation operates around 500 vehicles, as I recall,
Mhm.
500, 550, somewhere in that neighborhood, based out of Hudson, Illinois. And do you have other locations in different places?
We have other yards and facilities like drop yards, but all office personnel and shop personnel are out of it's Bloomington, Normal, Illinois, small
Mm,
town just north of there. So,
okay.
yep.
Okay. And pretty much all company drivers.
Yep.
And you also have an ESOP, so they're all sort of employee shareholders of the company.
Hmm.
So that's Newspawn Transportation. Transpro, on the other hand, they're a different organization based in Milton, Ontario, and you're around 100 trucks or so, Mike? 130 right now?
Pretty close, yeah.
Yeah, and traditionally have been very focused on owner operators. So you're getting to have a little bit more of a split now, but you have a lot of owner operators that you serve as well. So very different mindset, very different group there. And you both sort of go all over. So it's not like you're one local, one regional. You're both sort of all over the place, but very different sizes and very different types of driver in there. So, Mike, why don't you talk to us a little bit about how you position safety within the organization and get everybody thinking about things right at the beginning of the relationship?
Thank you, Mark. Well, I think it's important for people to understand what safety and compliance is, even though I believe majority of people out there already know that. But there's two words to that. Um, you know, People need to know, like, compliance is meeting regulatory requirements set out for, every employee or an owner operator, basically to follow a set of rules. Whether you're an employee or a company, we need to make sure that we are compliant and following those standards. On the other side of that coin is safety, and it's very simple. It's something like, not having wet hallways because they're tile when people come in from the rain, making sure people will wipe up, not waiting because it's somebody else's job. We'll look after each other. We'll explain to our drivers, go beyond the minimum following requirements, if you're following distances, so we don't hurt somebody else. Or ourselves because of the amount of time it takes to stop, making sure people have proper footwear and vests and again, that ties into safety. The amount of things that surface on your health and safety committee meetings, are they on there all the time? Are they coming off quickly? Is your program working or isn't it? Who's benchmarking marking it? Are you getting the support you need? But I believe when everybody breathes the same direction, um, you know, it's important because we have a moral and a legal obligation to ensure everyone gets home. We've heard this many times, to their families at the end of the day. And when you review this, how do you rate that success? So I think that starts right from, very similar things to what Rick said. It's right from the get-go. It's from our recruiting department, making sure we have the right fit for us and we're the right fit for them. I have that initial meeting with them before we get into the road evaluation to understand their needs. Is there anything they need? Better understanding of what our company is, because that's going to take some time, but I like to give them the groundwork. I like to be transparent. So, I was talking to somebody about this the other day, and the best thing we can do is be honest, because, when somebody lies to you, you go, why did they do that? So I want to be honest with them. It's obviously a lot easier to remember. But at the same time, we've set the tone, even right from our road test that, we have to follow the Highway Traffic Act. We didn't make the rules. We just need to follow it. And then, we'll go through our orientation. They will do, part of those modules. And as well, we've used, Carrier's Edge to put our own programs in there. Um, we've created safety from the beginning. We've also included our operations manager. They sit down with our fleet representative. They sit down with them. And when it's all said and done, at the very end, our general manager, and some people have a president, our president, he's all over North America. But I mean, our general manager of Transpro, who is our highest ranked official in the building, he sits and meets with them at the end when we're all done. So, it just comes to that culture and letting people know it's about the buy-in, and then we have to explain to them why there's a buy-in.
So
And
once again, you've got consistent messaging from different people. You've got sort of that top-down alignment between executive operations and safety that we're all in this together.
absolutely, and
Yeah.
and safety programs should spit it out. Safety programs should support operations, not create a resistance. And
Ah, that's
that's
a really good
Hmm.
point. So safety and operations really should be working together
100%.
rather than being at odds. Now, a lot of times they are seen as sort of conflicting programs, But the reality is that your job in safety is to ensure that there are qualified, safe people available to deliver the loads and to make sure that those people come back home safely so they can do it again.
100%. And it took me quite a few years. And I remember the original owner of Transpro, and he said, I'm black and white. And he said, that's a great trait to keep because a lot of people can't stay on the track. But he said, don't be afraid to add a little color to it now and then,
Hmm.
which meant a little more latitude without going outside the lines. And that
Hmm.
was something which was great because I got some feedback, and that's what we give our drivers is feedback. So if we don't accept constructive feedback, not criticism, there's two different things. If we don't accept
Hmm.
constructive feedback to ourselves, how can we expect people to buy in what we're telling them?
Right. Now, there's something else that you said very early on that I think is important. You were talking about sort of the idea of safety just around the facility, and you're talking about wet floors and things like that. But that really underscores a consistent message that you're going to go into orientation and do a speech about the importance of safety. But if people see a lot of hazards around the building, it's going to be right away creating some dissonance in there. So you've got consistency that you've got safety sort of around the facility. You've got everything. You've got people wearing their vests where they're supposed to be wearing their vests and like all of that kind of stuff. You were talking about the committee. So you've got consistent messaging from the beginning. You're practicing what you preach. And that's an important part of it too, I think.
Yeah, well
Um,
said.
yeah.
The key to make uh, safety feel support, we want it to be supportive and we want it to be practical.
Hmm.
These are just real working conditions that we work in.
Yeah.
So,
Mhm.
um,
Okay.
yeah.
We've got a hand raised. So, Dwayne, if you want to just use the Q&A, type in your question, we'll get to it in the context of this discussion. And that reminds me that any questions that you have, please put them in here. We do have a list of them that came from a very engaged registrant, and we will get those worked in as we get through the subjects here. And if there's any other questions, we'll make sure we get those as well. So, one of the things that I want to talk about is kind of how you measure the success of your safety programs. And this was something interesting for us in the Best Fleets to Drive For program this year. This was the first time that we actually asked people how they measure the success of their programs. What things do you look at to know whether or not your efforts are bearing fruit? And what was interesting is that we found the bulk of the respondents were using things like scores from a camera system or telematics or outside systems to tell them how they are doing. And sort of they're looking at their telematics or dash cam scores or whatever the case may be. I expected that it would still be focusing on things like CSA scores, DOT preventables, or like those kind of things. But those have really dropped down in terms of how often they're being used. Most people were looking at scores that are coming out of some other vendor's product. Both of you have really interesting ways of tracking your program. So I want to talk about how you're doing that, how you know that your safety efforts are working. So, Mike, will start with you on this one. So, what are the things that you look at to tell you that your efforts are being successful in safety?
Well, thanks, Mark. You can start with something as simple as your collisions, your convictions, your inspections. You know, I don't want it to sound reactive because it's not. But you have to have a base to start from somewhere. Is it we're not maintaining the equipment properly? That's not the case. I'm just giving you an example.
Hmm.
Is it that the driver maybe needs more training in pre-trip, or maybe a ride along to give them some feedback? The other thing is look at your claims. Your claims might tell you, maybe we're going into a particular area that maybe we're not set up for.
Hmm.
Maybe it's um, uh, there could be many factors to that.
Hmm.
So, the other thing is we're also, we're looking at our turnovers as well. So, uh, you know, um, when we look at our US, our driver fitness and our controlled substance and all those, your basics, um, you know, um, those numbers matter, but they're lagging indicators. Okay. They tell us already what happened. So sometimes the bigger question we should be asking is, do we have a deeper problem here? And that's where you need to drive your program down. You really, we call it the root cause. We have to keep peeling back every layer to get to where we need to be to figure out how we're going to improve it.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it can be just with driver feedback and through your support groups or driver committees and so forth. That may help. But I think when you can see that your crashes are coming down, your claims are coming down, your scores are coming down, what are you doing that's driving those programs and those numbers towards success?
Mm. Okay, excellent. Yeah, and Rick, what about you?
Yeah, a lot of what Mike said is fantastic. I think, and I know he does some of these things as well, like even participating in Carrier's Edge best fleets, right? Like when drivers get to grade you, and then if you're honest and truthful and you share that feedback back with them about how we rank, that's pretty powerful. Um, we do a couple, so we do best fleets. We also have an internal one called uh, People Element. It's it's just an internal. It's not a award or anything like that. It's just an internal rating system that we get to ask our own questions. And so one of the questions is about safety and how they feel about the safety department and what are issues and do you see things. So Mike said it in the previous conversation. Are you willing to take that own critique back?
Mm-hmm.
Because if I'm going to sit there and coach a driver, am I willing to be coached as well? And as the safety department. Some of the other things, I mean, a lot of these systems, you talk about event recorder systems, you talk about scoring systems, ELDs. There is so much data out there. Now, don't take off a giant chunk, take small bites at a time, but there's some really cool stuff that you can get. Do you have a idling issue, right? Do you have a following distance issue with these event recorders? And do little campaigns, little things that can help just lower those numbers down. And when you start taking those bites, also like we are trying to find ways to reward, right? Safety is always seen as the hand slap, like you got in trouble, you're going to the principal's office. How do you flip that? How do you make it so that safety is the one rewarding, right? And
Mm-hmm.
we got a couple initiatives, right, with all these event recorders. Who's a driver that went 90 days without a single like following distance trigger, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
how can you make it a fun game? Because when a driver sees a, like we call it our news bomb driver all stars. When you see a driver all star, I've had multiple drivers walk by my office and they say, oh, I'm not up there this month. Great, they're engaged, right? They're
Mm-hmm.
getting involved and seeing what's
Mm-hmm.
going around. So it's how do we create that buy-in, like Mike said.
Mm-hmm.
If I could
Now
just add
that's,
on,
yeah,
sorry,
go ahead.
if I could just add on that, we've also used surveys when drivers have come back from trips,
Mm-hmm.
and don't be afraid to put that out there because drivers may say one thing, but maybe it's something else. And usually, if they can put it in writing, there's going to
Mm-hmm.
be some merit behind it. Of course, you have to dig into it and find out, but it also gives them that voice that, hey, somebody's actually listening to me, as opposed to not that they wouldn't if they came into your office. Whatever works
Mhm.
for your company, we've done that before. We've done it numerous times, and we found it to be very successful because there were things that we don't always get a chance to hear from every single driver. So when we give them that platform, it gives them a chance at some point to think about it and, you know, is this something that just bugged me on this last trip, or is it something that's been going on for a while and maybe they were afraid to bring it up to us?
We've we've done bad load feedback, right? We can't get away from brokers. Um, we're 90% contracted, 85, 90% contracted. But there are some broker locations because drivers feedback and we send a survey on those loads. Hey, how was it? And we get feedback and okay, that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Ops thinks it's a win for them. Safety says that's a win because now I don't have a tight facility that's probably for a straight truck, not a, XY, right? You get all that information from the drivers and it helps create a better story for the
Okay, so you guys have taken this in a whole different direction. And so I
all right.
want to explore this a little bit because we started off with it like, how do you know your safety program is working? But what's really important about both of your answers is that it isn't just looking at metrics from some other system. Yes, those things are there and they can tell you some bits of information, but both of you are surveying your drivers as well to say, hey, is it working for you? What parts of it are working, what parts are not working, and what should we be doing? So it ends up being much more collaborative, which I can tell you from experience of the Best Fleets program, those kind of collaborative programs always lead to better safety outcomes because drivers feel that they're bought into it. They feel that they've got a piece of it. And it isn't necessarily about who had so many hard-braking incidents. Yeah, you're going to have that kind of stuff and you want to measure that. But to Mike's point, you also need to look into it to say why. Why is somebody having these heartbreaking incidents? Are they being pressured by operations? Are they in a place where they're uncomfortable? Do they have personal issues going on? Like all of those things you have to look into, and that's I think what comes out through your different surveys and the different collaborative
Hmm.
things that you've got. Um, Okay, we've got a couple of questions that have come in here that are sort of related to this. And actually, there was a question before that I'm just going to touch on. Are there any particular leading indicators that you look at that will say, okay, if we see this happening, we know we're likely to have problems? Maybe it's out of service rates, something about inspection quality, or anything coming out of your telematics or cameras, anything there? Rick, we'll start with you.
Yeah. Um, so without getting into too much detail, we use the telematics and we generate 5 different scores. Um, Throttle usage, spacing, how well they maintain space, speed limit, smooth driving, like accelerating and braking. And we've set up perimeters. The main two we focus on, especially for a brand new to new spawn driver, is how well they keep spacing and how well they follow speed limits. Two legal and major safety issues, right? Um, and we can typically, if we focus a driver on improving those areas, they typically start to improving like their smooth driving and their throttle. So I would say that's one area of lead measures. We also have a comprehensive scorecard that also includes operations, and so we take into account like how well a driver is communicating and letting us know like service failures, service issues. Um, you know, things like are they reporting truck issues, stuff like that. And if they report it, if they're proactive in reporting a truck issue, even though it's still downtime, they get rewarded for that. Versus if we catch it, they run their truck and it gets brought through here and we catch all the issues, then there's some coaching and even more downtime because they didn't report it, right? So I want them to report issues, so we reward it, right? Even though it's downtime and it's affecting us, but it keeps them running longer. So just little incentives like that. Um,
But that's a good point because that sort of tells you, particularly for new hires, it tells you how diligent they are. Are they
right,
paying attention? Are they following process? Are they
right,
willing to do the right thing, even if it might mean some downtime? That gives you a lot of indicators about what kind of person you're working with.
right,
Similarly to looking at the following speeding and like those kind of things that you were looking at tell you a lot about the person, and that gives you a sense of what you're dealing with and what you need
right.
to maybe do in terms of coaching. That's excellent. Mike, are there leading indicators that you look at, things that tell you that somebody's going to do well or potentially have problems?
Well, yes, there can be very similar to what Rick had mentioned. Three of the ones that I look in particularly are speed. Everybody speeds, but
Mm,
I'm not saying it's acceptable. I'm just saying it happens. Um, with that usually leads into harsh brakes.
mm,
So I believe they're tied together. One of the things that we have our categories, the lowest one that we have is our collision warning uh,
mm,
information, which is like near
mhm,
zero, which is really good. I think it's really important to monitor that driver within the first couple of weeks or a month and get that feedback, because we do driver feedback after their first trip,
Hmm.
2 weeks, 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, a year later, and then we do them. We were doing quarterly meetings before. I think I mentioned this in March, where now we're doing actually reviews now quarterly, or sorry,
Hmm.
monthly. Sometimes if they're really good, which majority of them are, which I'm proud to say, because of where they are, or maybe it's after hours, whatever, sometimes we can even do it over the phone because we want to have that flexibility, but we do need them to come in to sign in, and they know that, so we need them to sign off on the documents. Or if there is more, similar to what Rick said, there could be some coaching or that maybe some training that we need to give them in person. Sometimes it might be reviewing a video or whatever, and it's about the buy-in. And
Hmm.
it's something what Rick said. It's not the dungeon. Safety should never be viewed as the penalty box.
Hmm. Hmm.
So,
Okay, so you're touching on coaching, and that's where I'm going to sort of shift to next, and some questions about that. So we do have a question to come in here, and it's a two-part question, and I'm gonna park it for a little bit because we're going to be hitting that in a couple of minutes. But I do want to talk about the coaching and sort of development of drivers. And you both have really interesting ways of working with your drivers to do coaching and training programs that are a little bit non-standard. So, Rick, let's start with you and
hmm
talk a little bit about the Cert Red program and
hmm
how you work coaching into your driver development.
Yeah, so we call it certified red or cert red if for short, and red obviously new spam colors. That's where it comes from. But it's a driver development, and the intention behind it was every trade you can, apprentice, journeyman, you can get all these certifications, increase your pay, all that stuff, become a master tech, whatever. Um, except for trucking. Yeah, you could get your doubles, triples, tanker, but there's no continual development. So what we did at Newspawn is we generated a program certified red, and it's a continual development. It's not mandatory. You have the ability to enter it if you want. And there's a series of hands-on trainings that you do. So like winter driving, we teach every driver, not that we require drivers to chain, but we teach every driver how to put a chain on, just because what if you get caught or there's a situation where it's useful? We're majority Midwest, West. So you can get caught in some pretty nasty situations in Fargo, North Dakota, right? So we teach those aspects. Um, uh, things like, so I said winter driving, a skills challenge. We have coaches that were former drivers for us or CDL holders, and you go out and can you operate the truck efficiently, right? Using all the tools. Um, there's a lot of bells and whistles on the trucks anymore. And so are you properly using it? Are you, everybody thinks automatic truck. No, it's not automatic. It's an automated manual. So it still floats through gears like you should. So if you're driving a manual, should you hammer down? No, because that's not how you shift gears properly. Now we are all young and dumb at some point, right? And you were trying to impress someone, and so you did some kind of burnout, but that's not how we normally drive. So why do we just hammer down? It teaches those aspects, getting them hands on, and then it's also teaching them the business. So they do some hands on training. They do some they sit with operations for 2 hours. What better way than to have a driver sit with their driver manager for 2 hours to learn what's going on, right?
Right.
What goes into their loads and dispatches. They sit with the shop for 2 hours so they can see what happens when a breakdown comes in, and what it takes to get road service out to them. And then on the flip side of that, we have some office programs. I like to call this out because on the office side, we have office programs where we encourage our employees to spend a day in the truck.
Mm.
And so when they see that continual buy-in across the across the stage, it just gets excitement a little bit more because you realize like, okay, they do have a tough job. It's different than
Mhm.
mine. I would much rather do mine than theirs, but now I have a better understanding. And so that's the goal of Certified Red, continual development training. And then um, there's pay increases that go with it. So every 100,000 miles, they get a ring, they get a diamond in the ring. By the time they hit 1 million miles, they'll have 10 diamonds on that ring. Um, do a little presentation, all sorts of stuff.
So
So
this program runs over an extended period. It's got multiple levels and it sort of keeps going over a while.
yeah, it should take to if you don't have any resets, like any major accidents, service failures, like it doesn't just involve safety, it involves your job.
Hmm.
If you don't have any major situations, if and I've got a few drivers, we've had it for 8 years. They're about ready to hit their 1 million mile mark
Hmm.
and they've had no resets. So that means no accidents, no inspections, no incidents,
Hmm.
no late loads. They keep a clean truck. All that stuff goes into it. Now they're also earning through this program. They're also earning 7 cents extra per mile
Mm.
because
So
they've got all the way up to that level.
So it ends up being a kind of a combination of a sort of traditional scorecard bonus type thing or performance bonus and professional development and
Right.
sort of career development because they get kind of levels that they can hit. So there's a really
Right.
nice combination of options in there, and
Right.
you're having them do some kind of courses that are sort of things they work on their own. You're doing
Mm-hmm.
some coaching with them. You're doing some non-standard stuff as well. I really like
Mm-hmm.
how you bring them into the office and bring them into the shop because there's often this sense that like drivers are kind of external entities and there's real silos between the in-office and driving employees. But by knocking down those barriers and letting them see that context, they have a whole different perspective on why you're always on their backs about different things, why you keep talking about certain things. Because then they see it and it becomes a lot more real for them. It's a really nice program. Mike, let's talk about how you do it because you've got some really interesting ways of coaching and developing drivers. And I want to talk a little bit about how you do the coaching directly yourself and sort of internally. You already talked about the reviews, so let's sort of build on that with a little bit of the coaching and also the way you bring in outsiders to be part of it as well. You bring in outside entities to be part of that. So talk about that for a little bit.
Okay. Um, well, um, we found that we had drivers that had a lot of experience in Canada and maybe and wanted to now switch over to US, but didn't have that experience. So, if they were willing to take the time to learn it, we would send them out with one of our mentors. And because driving in the US is a little bit different than driving in Canada. You've got border, you've got, more rest areas. Um, um, the whole gamut of that. So we want to make
Mhm.
sure that when that driver has his paperwork and his ACE and all these other things, that that driver will feel comfortable going out on their own, not like an episode of Fear Factor, that they're going to get in trouble and I'm going to lose my job and they're frustrated and their mind is going to be elsewhere instead of driving. So it's a coaching. You've got somebody beside you that you can ask questions to. You develop the relationship, you develop the connection, you can call them. So that was a kind of like an integration with people, or somebody hasn't done it for a while, or we found that maybe they didn't have any training at all. So we wanted them to adopt our best practices because that's what our company does. So it could be, one trip. And then the nice thing about that coaching is part of that finishing program is that the coach will there's documents that I give them to fill out that to make sure that the boxes are checked. Not just boxes are checked, but that they understand it and they're proficient in it, or do they need more training in it? And on the other side of that coin is the driver actually evaluates the coach. So,
Mhm.
did he explain things? Was it did he have patience? Um, so forth and so on. There's a whole list. And then they come back and I compare the two and I review it with them both in person and let's make sure, do you need to go back out again? Did you feel confident? Would you like some more, or maybe this is something I could do with maybe somebody in the city? What exactly, we can tailor made it. We just need to know which wheel needs the grease.
Okay, hold that thought for a second because that's important what you're saying there, that you don't just sort of pick coaches as being people that are sort of experienced and then send them
No,
off on their own to be a coach. You give them a template, you give them guidelines. Here's what I want you to accomplish as a coach. And you have that checklist for them to go through. And you're having the drivers, the people being coached, actively be part of it as well to give feedback so that they can continue to improve the quality of that program and make sure that the coaching is happening the way you want it to.
absolutely. And we want the consistency to be there. I don't want to have somebody coach one way, somebody coach another. It's subjective, it's there, it's
Hmm.
documented. We feel good about that. We can share that information with operations. It helps them.
Hmm.
So when we're dealing with dispatch or fleet or whatever, we all have the same information. So
Hmm.
we want to see them succeed. Now, we're just going into the other part of that about the training. We're literally a week this Friday is our first safety meeting of the year. We do them twice a year. We do one and then we do another one around U.S. Thanksgiving because a lot of our trucks are parked. And this year we're doing something that we did very similar was we'll have half of it at the hotel, the other half will be back here at the yard. And if it's a nice day out, we'll do it in the yard. And if it's raining, I've already got support from our shop manager that we can use one of the bays in there. And we're basically going to be putting defects on the vehicle, and they'll have 10 minutes to find it. They're not going to, we're not going to go through whole air brake test and whatnot, but these are going to be very obvious signs that
Mm.
they should see how they do, and we'll categorize whoever got the best score for that class. We'll end up with some sort of a recognition. We haven't quite got to what that'll be yet, but we have plenty of time. But it's about the buy-in. It's a chance for them to ask questions. Where I brought before. I've had the police officers from Milton who were also CVSA trained. I might have used the word MTO before, and I have had them in here, and it gave them a chance. I've actually put the request in, so I'm not sure which one I'll be getting. Hopefully, I'll get one of them to come in, and it gives them a chance to ask those questions to law enforcement, other than when they're on the side of the road and they can't wait to get in the truck and head out get back on the on-ramp onto the highway where they can breathe again. Gives them a chance to say, ask questions. And at first they were a little timid, and at the end they were taking
Mhm.
pictures with them, and it changed their opinion
Mhm.
of who's they're doing their job. So,
Mhm.
but it gave them that opportunity to do that,
Mhm.
and we made it fun. And training should be fun. It doesn't have to be cloak and dagger and do it my way and fear and intimidation. That's gone the way of the
Mhm.
dinosaur. So we found by them doing the hands-on,
Mhm.
it opens them up a little bit because
Mhm.
maybe they haven't done that. Some maybe haven't done it
Mhm.
in the past, but it's just a different way that we've done it. And when we can explain that to them, one of the things that I'd like to, if anything, that I'd like to leave at the end of this meeting is I think it's important that we start telling drivers what they're doing right instead of wrong.
Yeah.
Um, you know, you did this or you did that, and you just come back and you get hammered. And now that's where safety gets that name and that shroud of, it's like that little zone of, you want to bypass the safety office.
Mhm.
Well, no, we want them
Mhm.
to be open. You want to come in and see us, and it's all in how you talk to them. We have to put the passion back in people. This isn't
Mm.
this isn't the this isn't the final frontier, the end of the road when you come to see us.
Yeah.
In essence, we're cleaning the mess up, but it's
Mhm.
on how you deliver it, and have a
Yeah.
little compassion to them because they're probably embarrassed or worried when they're
Yeah.
coming in. It's kind of like when you get pulled over by police. You might not even know a taillight, but or it's something, whatever, and
Yeah.
it's like the officer let you go. He's the
Mhm.
greatest thing since sliced bread. And if he gives you a ticket, he's a PR. Well, you can't
Yeah.
have it both ways. But it's just
Right.
like we're adults. We're all doing the same thing. We all have the same purpose because we want to make the company money. Let's do it collaboratively.
Mhm.
Let's do it professionally. And
Mhm.
let's put a little bit of empathy into this because
Mhm.
it's not easy, any easier for them. And because we're in the office doesn't mean that gives us a
Mhm.
right to we're not the punishers, and like I said, we're not the penalty box. So and it's all in how you approach them and talk to them. i've
Mhm.
i've had people where I've actually sat on the other side of my desk and
Mm.
got away from behind the desk because now and I
Right.
can sit to them and talk to them. And
Right.
sometimes they open up things and you find out there's things going on in their life, and I don't want to be like dear like Ann Landers or anything, but
Yeah.
hey, do you want to talk about it? And
Yeah.
sometimes they do, and sometimes they open it up freely. And
Right.
I've had drivers, you know, just bawl because all of a sudden you find out there's things going on in their life. And I carry a
Mm.
box of Kleenex in here for them. It's just they're human. They're human.
Yeah.
I can deal with the little bumps and bruises. It's the big ones we're trying to stay away
Mhm.
from. And those are the things.
So you just talked, the importance of being positive and having empathy and all of that, but you're also talking about ways of making it kind of fun to get through things like the inspection challenge, you're
Yeah.
finding defects and things like that. That's a great approach to it, is recognizing that this is not a chore, this is not punishment, this is how we get better as a group. And I would be remiss if I did not give Rick time to talk about the song.
Oh, I don't even know that I need to. All I know is we were having more, we were having more um, winter related incidents than we would like to have, right? Like your loss of control, too fast for conditions, however you want to say it. And we're like, okay, whatever we're saying, like we talked to everybody and they know what they should have done, but they didn't do it. So one of our individuals who does all of our training content, he was a driver for us and is in the office now. They used AI and just some of their background to write a jackknife song. And now all of a sudden, like it's kind of like a cheesy song with a bunch of our safety people in it pretending to be a band, and you'll hear people say don't stomp the brakes, and now all of a sudden it's stuck in your head and it's
Yeah.
cheesy. It's like your little kid song, like right? I won't say the names of them because I don't want them in my head. I got a little one at
No.
home. I don't need it. But
We can just move on from it
right,
so it doesn't get stuck in your head too much.
right.
But what's great about that is it's a good example of finding ways to approach this as a positive sort of development thing as something that's a little bit more lighthearted rather than the punishment type stuff. And I will say for the audience that we've run the Best Fleets to Drive For program 18 years now. I don't even know how many hundreds of fleets we've evaluated. This is the first time I've heard of somebody having a song. It is a fantastic idea. So there you go. All of the answers to all of your questions about how to best have a safety program, make a song.
Well, and everyone, I think this idea is everyone gets so over the doom and gloom, right?
Hmm.
Like,
Hmm.
how do you make it different?
Yeah.
Most of these drivers know, and if
Hmm.
they don't know and you coach them and you do it well, like they're going to receive it well. But like
Hmm.
one of our loss of controls was a driver that was here for 14 years.
Right.
He knew better. It's just
Right.
he didn't do it. And how do we keep it in the mind and refresh and
Right.
get
So
creative?
And that brings us around to the last section that I want to talk about, more specifically about training.
Hmm.
We are on a training webinar, and we are going to have to talk about training. We haven't even talked about online training really at all. But one of the questions here is about how do you get buy-in, where you have the split, where you have some people that are into it and some people that say, "Well, I've been a professional for decades. Why do I need this?" And so, like, first off, this was the question. I'm a professional driver. I don't need training. Well, first off, this is somebody who thinks of training as punishment, who thinks of it as, why do
Hmm.
I have to do this chore? It's like, why you're asking them to clean a bathroom or something. But part of, I think the answer there is everything you guys have both been talking about is to recognize that it can be something positive, find a way to make it enjoyable. But how do you address those kind of comments from people that, I've been around for a long time, I've been doing this forever, why do I need this? And Mike, I'll
I
put you on the spot first.
Well, I think I think you nailed it, Mark, and I can't maybe expand from that. It's about the buy-in, and it's how you lay that buy-in. And my philosophy has been, and I tell the drivers this because I firmly believe, because I was a former driver, and I did have some great uh, safety people that I worked under. So you take your little golden nuggets and you create your own style. Um, my philosophy, and I tell the drivers, I'm going to do everything that I can to protect you. And when I do that, you're protecting the company. It's not company first, then driver. Forget about the corporate and all that,
Mhm.
the hammer and Judge Judy. No, no, that's not us. We want to make sure we're going to give you every tool to succeed. And then, when you can show that you're fair, you're consistent, you understand the job, and they can see that we generally care about their well-being, then even those difficult conversations become easier and less stressful for everyone.
Mm. Okay.
So,
Yeah.
um, I'm not sure if that actually answered your question.
Yeah, so it's about how you roll it out and how you approach it. Is saying this is going to be for everybody, and here's why we're doing it.
Yeah,
We're doing it to try and make sure everybody's there. Okay, and Rick, how do you address that? What do you guys do there?
Yeah. So every like we call them performance supervisors, are the one that review the training and coaching.
Hmm.
Everybody has some of their own like sayings and slogans, but some of them are like, okay, every player has a coach, right? Every
Hmm.
professional athlete, like, and
Hmm.
their coach may not necessarily be
Hmm.
a former player or a good
Hmm.
player, right? But every player has a coach.
Yeah.
Or, you'll hear the classes, if we quit learning, we're dying, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, I think the mentality on that though is like, okay, how one of the things that I approached is I wasn't a former driver that got into
Mm.
safety.
Mm.
And so I don't have that over the road experience. So some of the areas I had to approach on is, okay, I would ask the question, so you've been driving for 20 years, how much has the industry changed? Right?
Excellent.
Because when you
Yeah.
recognize that the industry has changed, then
Hmm.
you start to recognize, okay, how I drove 20 years ago doesn't necessarily work today.
Yeah.
And I think it goes back to how do you do it? Right? Like if I'm coming in there and there are some things there, we use a term like you use the term like rod of correction, right? If you're just
Hmm.
constantly whipping them.
Hmm.
Now, major situations, a 15 over speeding ticket, yeah, some of those things do need a rod of correction. But like if you catch it beforehand and we're coaching and we're training and we're doing the carrier's edge videos and you're making them a little different,
Hmm.
once people start doing them, then it becomes a little piece that they're
Hmm.
okay, this is part of my day to day. Also, we pay for it.
Hmm.
Yes,
Well, there's that
we,
part of it. Yes.
yeah,
Don't
like if
expect them to
you're
do it for free.
yeah,
Yeah.
if you're gonna expect them to do the training,
Uh-huh.
yes, that's part of the job, but
Hmm.
if you really want them to do it,
Yeah.
I mean, what?
Well, yeah, that's a really good point. And one of the other things that I'll add in there after many, many years of doing this is that if you have a driver who's saying, I don't need training or I don't want to do the online piece, normally this comes up when you're rolling out the online, I don't want that. It often has very little to do with the actual training. It often is more of the fear of what if I don't do well? I've got a reputation here for being a guy who knows it all. What if I fail this course? Or what if I find it technically difficult because I'm not really a tech savvy kind of guy? That tends to be where those responses are coming from. So the answer to the question is, I think if you have a one-on-one conversation with somebody about what their concerns are, you probably will find that it's something that is very manageable on that.
Yeah.
There's another and good comments on the coaching from John Farquhar, but sports players reviewing their stuff, always reviewing their plays. Drivers are no different. Just what you were saying, Rick. Every player's got a coach, so that's good observation. And then there was another part of the question that was about inward-facing cameras. Do either of you have inward-facing cameras or just front-facing? Okay. How are you finding that? How did the implementation go? And how are you finding it as part of data collection? Like, well, first of all, how did you sell it to drivers? And then how's it going for you?
Yeah, so we've had inward facing cameras for 12 years. Um,
Hmm.
so it's kind of been a part of it. Our recruiters talk about it really upfront right away. It's one of the lists that they have to go over. Now, I haven't been at Newspawn since they started inward facing, but a year ago we switched providers. And so
Hmm.
when you switch providers, there's concerns with all your former drivers. So like inward facing cameras, when we switched providers, we called every single driver. We got them one on one on the phone. There was a group of 8 of us that were calling every single driver. talking them
Mhm.
through. If they wanted to come in and meet with us in person, we would sit down and meet with them in person.
Mhm.
We're in Illinois, and there's AI, and
Mhm.
so there's BIPA, and we have it on. We
Mhm.
have the driver sign a BIPA form. We had two drivers of 550 leave, and
Mhm.
2 months after one of the drivers left, one of them called to ask to come back, because he talked to his friends that were there that are here still, and he's like, "Yeah, they told us it wasn't that bad. What are
Mhm.
you doing? Like, are you using it to say I got you,
Mhm.
or are you using it to truly exonerate, help, coach, develop?" Right? Like,
Mhm.
I think a lot of it is your approach. Yeah,
Mhm.
take the time to go deep into it if you want to do it. I highly recommend it. Um, it's incredible what you can get, and it's incredible how it just helps protect the driver even more. Even something as little as you can now see out the driver's side windows and the
Mhm.
passenger side windows and see vehicles come up. Like, to me, it's been fantastic, for the exoneration piece, and then it's just added development for talking with drivers. So
Okay. Excellent. Mike, you're not using it facing, right? You're front facing
No,
only?
we're not. I understand that one of our sister companies is in the midst of a pilot project on working on
Mhm.
that right now.
Mhm.
And once we get that feedback, I think it's great. I have seen it at some trade shows, the side, and I've seen the videos, and I think it's fabulous.
Mhm.
It certainly helps it out many times where we had somebody in the U.S. not too long ago ran down the side of the road, hit our skirt. And one thing was that we actually captured off the West Coast mirror, but the other
Mhm.
lucky part was there was a driver behind us who actually stopped, who had it on his camera, and
Hmm.
was willing to offer that to the officer. So, but if they weren't there, what would we do? So
Mhm.
sometimes when we can get that camera, but if we have our own camera, I think it would be great, and I wouldn't have a problem with the camera inside because I think there's a lot of misunderstanding on what that is. So,
Mhm.
there's a
it's considered the workplace, but it's
Mhm.
not going to take a picture of you while you're changing or whatever. It's just it's there to protect them.
Mhm.
so
Um,
there there's a lot of, like, all these different providers have so many different use cases where you can, like, shut it off at specific times, where they can enter a code to turn it off when they're parked. Like, there's all these different things to help protect the driver when it's now their home and no longer just a
Mhm.
workplace. And we have those in place, and we don't abuse it.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
so I would just say they're fantastic. If it is somewhere you're going to go, the next best thing to do is get a few drivers who, like, we typically, when we beta test some of these stuff, we find drivers that are all about technology. We find drivers that are not about technology. And are you willing to test this? Because even the drivers that don't love technology, they realize where things are going,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
they might be willing to give you information to help streamline and make the process a little bit better, or have it fit for
Mhm.
your company, your industry.
Okay. Well, excellent. That is going to bring us to the end. So thanks, guys, for your time. Thanks very much for your insights. Excellent, as always. And for the audience, thank you for attending. There will be a recording that's available. And stay tuned for further webinars from us next month. Thanks, everybody.
All right.
Thank you,
Thank
Mark.
you all.